Every Tuesday night feels like Christmas Eve. Living between Wednesdays.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on the Wednesday Night Reviews. And tonight we're doing something a little different. I'm having a nice little sketch duel with some of the previous guests that we've had on the show. So first and foremost, I'll bring them out in sort of order of who looks currently boardest on stream. So first is DS, Barrick, or Dan. Dan, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
How's it going?
It's going very well, Dan. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Oh, I'm really excited about it. This is fun.
Perfect. And the next person we have on, I guess I'll bring on Shawn. Shawn, thanks for coming on the show today.
Howdy, how's it going?
It goes good, thank you. All right, and Becka, here we go. Welcome to the stream, Becka.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And last but not least, here's David. How's it going, David? Oh, you've got us on mute. There we go.
Oh, jeez. I'm tech savvy, you can tell.
Absolutely. For the folks at home, basically what we're doing is a classic sketch duel. Instead of having some sort of prompt like a superhero or something, I wanted to let everyone either work on something they were actually needed to work on, covers, pages, whatever. So Shawn and Becka, it sounds like you have something to work on, which is great. Dan, as you mentioned, you don't currently have anything that you're actively working on. So I'll give you sort of two options. Sure. Either, like I said, you can draw Murgatroyd and Nepenthe, one or the other, or another of your characters sitting at a table eating something. And David, I'll be able to bring your stream online soon. If I'm not mistaken, it looks like you've got something actively that you are working on a book, correct?
Me? Yes.
Perfect. And actually, I can bring that in when I'm ready.
I've got two different books that I'm working on.
Perfect. So then, yeah, we can sort of go through, get started, start drawing, do what makes you happy. And I might very well go through and start bugging you all about what you're working on so that we can at least showcase what it is that you do. And then from there, we'll have some fun with it. So just to start, Becka, because we've got a nice shot of you on screen, what is it that you're working on?
I'm working on the cover for the Wormhole Club Tragedy 3. So it's an idea I've had sitting in my head for a while. And I have not drawn a layout for this at all, but we're just going to wing it anyway. Because,
nice.
Yeah, so last time I did this, that was how the cover for Gehenna Death Valley happened for the deluxe edition. And it turned out okay. So let's see how this goes.
I like it.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, and let's see what Shawn is up to. And Shawn, what is it that you're going to be working on today?
So I'm just getting all my bearings together for another Samurai Grandpa book that we're going to be putting out. It looks like we'll have some news about it on Friday. So I have to, this is the first book came out in 2017. I think it was that long ago. So I haven't drawn these characters in a very long time.
Oh, wow.
I say very long. It's been like 5 years. But at the same time, I just want to get used to drawing them again. So I'm spending this entire week just going through the old books and kind of relearning how to draw them, essentially. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, I bet. And let's see here if I can get this all to work for me the way I want. Am I liking that? All right, and Dan, actually here, let's...
You're on drawing view.
Yeah, so I've got you. I've actually, ironically, it's worked out pretty good. In stream, you're in the middle, and then just below you is...
Can I post so it looks like those are my actual arms? Yeah,
what do
so
you-
I'm kind of in between official art for my book because I'm working on the graphic design for book 2, and most of the actual art stuff that I have to do, I need to do digitally. So I'm just gonna work on something food or coffee based, like you mentioned, with those characters.
Sounds good. Keep the mental muscles moving. And let's see here. Oh, it looks like David might have stepped away, so we'll let him come back. He has brought up, and let's see if I can show this off. It's just me. And this is currently, it's in the Wednesday Night Reviews Discord. It's a book that David's working on. Oh, beautiful. David, what is it that you're going to be working on today?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear, and we can currently see what you're drawing.
Okay. I just switched to a laptop instead of my danky ass phone from 1997. So I am currently working on a book that is called Big Game Saga. It's let's see. Where is it? This book is about a ninja who gets plucked out of time to come and battle some like CrossFit bros, basically. This is a shot of a page where essentially these dudes are hunting through the safari and they come across a centurion who just jumps out at them. And they fight him and blah, 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 blah. So I'm working on the scene where this is all just a promo shot to sell it to whoever the patron is who's going to sign up for it. So the patron decides that he wants to fight a samurai. So they go and pluck some farmer. It turns out the farmer is actually a ninja. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It should be.
Sounds rad. That's awesome.
And quick question. Can you all hear each other okay?
I can.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the resounding response I got, we're good. So I do classically interview, and you've all interviewed with me. So just something that was sort of piquing my mind, because you all have very different styles. Do you think the type of stories that you tell influence your art, or maybe vice versa, or some mix in between? And I guess maybe we'll start with Becka. What do you think?
I don't know. I guess so. I guess the darker the tone my stories are, the darker the drawings come out. And it's just something I don't purposefully do. It's just like a subconscious kind of thing. If that makes sense, you know. I just don't think about it too much. It's like I'm the kind of artist that I allow my work to evolve with each chapter of whatever I'm working on, and it's like, oh, okay, you know, because that way I'm like, if I don't allow myself to evolve, I won't grow as an artist. At least that's the way how I approach it, you know. And I always want to continuously learn as I draw.
Yeah,
You know.
dig it.
Yeah, the learning never stops, basically.
Every day's a school day.
Yes. Like today, it's how to draw tornadoes. Okay.
Oh, God.
Something so simple, but now I'm like overthinking it, and it's like, how do I approach this? That will visually make sense. But anyway, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Shawn, what about you? Do you think this type of stories you like to tell influences your art, or vice versa?
Yeah, big time, actually, to kind of play off what Becca just said. Like, the style is always changing. It's been changing ever since I kind of started drawing. And it'll probably continue to keep changing as I continue to draw. And yeah, like certain projects. I mean, if I couldn't draw a noir or a crime comic, let's say, in the style of the original Terracool books that I drew, and expect it to look and feel like, you know, a solid crime or noir story. So I think definitely the style that I'm working in at any given time definitely has a lot to do with the types of stories that I can tell at that time.
Interesting. And Dan, what about you? What sort of facilitated what on your end?
Well, I think I'm perhaps a bit narrower in range. I tend to work in a very cartoony kind of style, and that does influence the kind of stories that I do. I'm big into kind of that funny book aesthetic. So, but there is some range as well. The other project that I have active is Lucky Unlucky, which is written by Scott McDougall, and while it's still a humor comic, it's definitely a bit more traditionally structured than Murgatroyd and Nepenthe. And so the art does reflect that with kind of a tighter style. I tend to rely on inking with a brush with that. There's a lot of pre-penciling, whereas the Murgatroyd and Nepenthe stuff is a lot more kind of spontaneous. And as a result, I'm using a lot of pens, working directly in ink, and trying a lot more weird combinations of stuff. So yeah, I do think the type of story, it's all within that kind of cartoony realm, but the type of story it is does influence sort of the techniques that I'm using, the tools that I'm using, and kind of the overall appearance of the book.
Cool. All right. And what about you, David? Do you find that this type of story impacts your art style or vice versa?
Yeah, I feel like people ask me to draw whenever I draw for someone else, like someone else writes it instead of me. I like to accept projects where it kind of like I'm doing a cyberpunk anthology with Alex Batts over with LKC, and that one is supposed to be the future. So it's like all of this kind of stuff where you've got, cool, like weird looking buildings that are supposed to be kind of futuristic, and weird motorcycles that only have like one fork in the front, stuff like that, which is a far cry from the vampire comic that I was working on for myself for a long time. And a far cry from like mermaids and fantasy.
Definitely.
But yeah, so I mean, it changes. I also have a comic that I really want to get off the ground, but that sort of depends on my cohort, who happens to be my daughter, because she's really lazy. It's called Yuki the Dragon Slayer, and it's about a interdimensional dragon slayer who's like in middle school, basically, and she comes crashing to Earth on this ball of flame. And I wanted it to be much more cartoony and accessible to younger audiences and stuff. So that would be a challenge for me. But yeah, definitely whatever I'm working on will change the flavor of the way I'm trying to draw, at least, So
Interesting. Dan, I like that cup.
Thank you.
So one of the main things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to or for today's show is basically how to do comics, and I don't mean like how to draw well, but the actual day in day out, how does one be a comic creator? So in no particular order, what is it that you felt, I guess, helped most in getting your comic made when it came to the day-to-day grind?
Well, when I was trying to get my first book off the ground, I just Discord is stopped broadcasting. When I was trying to get my book off the ground, I just sort of worked on it every single day, like chipped away at it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that it was, I could see incremental progress as I went along, because it can be real daunting. You 28 pages or whatever, and You're like, how am I ever going to get that done? Or you come across a page that's really complex, it's written really complex, and you're like, what does that even look like? I have no idea, Just chip away at it little by little, and it helped me anyway get things finished.
What about you, Becca? When you've got to say get a comic made, it's in your head but not yet on a page. How do you get it there? What's the day-to-day look like?
It changes with each issue. Just like previously, usually it'll start out with point form ideas, like in a notebook or something like that, or in my notes on my iPad. This time though, like for issue 3, the art has been coming faster than what I'm writing down. Like my script is not even finished fully, so just whatever's in my head. As long as and I don't start it until it makes sense, the sequence of pages, before I continue. And I would not recommend that method really, but I'm just going with the flow. Like it happened with Gehenna too. When that happens, I'm like, yeah, just why not? It just makes it interesting, the chaos of doing it like that. Because meanwhile, I do have the beats of the story down in my head. And so at this stage now, I've got both point form notes and artwork, and about halfway through the book right now, like working that way. Yeah. And then parts of it, other reasons too, is like there's parts in this book where I'm doing research on. So I want to write this part, but I'm like, okay, even though it's on the fantastical side, the story, I want to do research on this one topic. So it's not like completely ridiculous, because the thing I find effective with horror and suspense is something that's based on reality that makes it scarier, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And then that way the scares can be more effective.
Well, as someone who's been scared by your work, thanks, I guess. Like, ouch, this is going to be not great when I go to read it.
Yes. Happy to hear that.
What is it that you're researching, or is that too much of a spoiler?
No, it's fine. Like it doesn't really give anything away. So I've been researching things like the planet Saturn to tornadoes, specifically the El Reno tornado from 2013, I think. I'll have to double check. Don't quote me on the date though. It's like the biggest tornado ever recorded in the States. And then recently the submersible that imploded. Yeah. And how I'm just like, hey, like space and the ocean are really not that different as far as like, we don't know much of what's out there, and both are terrifying and can kill you easily. And, and I just learned like most of the ocean has not been explored. So that's been blowing my mind. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, isn't it like we only know like 30% of the ocean or something like that?
Something like that. Something like shockingly low. Like I had no idea.
Cthulhu is not out in space. He's just down in Mariana's Trench.
But Lovecraft did combine like the cosmic horrors and the ocean. So there's again the connection with the two.
Terrifying. That and squids. Ugh.
Oh, squids and octopus. Don't get me started with them. It's like, oh, is that cute? And I'm like, no, not when they're big.
And Shawn, when it comes to the daily grind, what's sort of the key for you when it comes to getting through it?
Well, for me, there's always a hurdle when I start like a new project. There's always this, it's kind of like analysis paralysis where I have, this 100 to 120 to 160 page book kind of laid out, and it's like, oh my God, I have to draw this now. This is terrifying. And
so
there's a lot of anxiety at that stage of the game. But I find that as soon as I, spend like a week just kind of getting into the groove, which is what I'm doing today and what I've been doing all week, just kind of getting used to drawing these characters again to gear up to actually do the book. But as soon as I get into that groove, it just kind of becomes a habit where it's just like, okay, I know what I'm doing every day now. I wake up, I put a page together. If I'm lucky, or if it's a simple page, maybe 2. And then I kind of move on to the non-work hobbies that I have to kind of make sure I'm getting that separation in there. So I'm not just work, draw, write kind of thing. So I'm very thankful for video games and board games, and in those times, they make everything easier.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, once the groove sets in, it's just kind of like, all right, I know what I'm doing now. It's not as scary. It's not as scary as I thought. It's just work. And yeah, it just happens naturally. But you got to just like wake up and do it. That's that's the key thing.
Cool. And one quick shout out for both Shawn and David. You're both musicians. So I guess Shawn, to sort of keep going, because what you're drawing, you just released a little bit of would it be an album or a demo for it? Talk about the music you just released.
Yeah, so well, every book that I release, I do a companion soundtrack in the form of like 8-bit music, which is basically like, think of old Nintendo and Game Boy games. It's that style of music. Just because a lot of the books that I do are influenced by video games and whatnot. David, what do you play? Are you like
I play a bunch of different things.
Cool.
I play guitar. Guitar is my primary instrument, but I also play drums and bass in another band. And I play a little bit of piano.
Oh, sweet. So you're quite versed in instruments, eh?
I'm like okay at almost everything. I can sort of build a house and it won't fall down. Like, I'm that kind of guy. So I wouldn't say that I'm a master at any of these things. But one of my bands is going on tour. We're leaving next Thursday for like 10 days. We're going to go to New Mexico and Arizona to go play like 10 shows.
Yo, that's wicked. Holy
Yeah,
smokes.
cool. Exciting.
Oh, one important thing. Now that you're mentioning locations, I guess sort of in my normal style. Again, you don't have to be super specific. If you're comfy with saying the town you're from, great. If not, the province and/or state is perfectly fine too. David, where are you located?
I'm located in Austin, Texas, right smack in the middle. A big old blueberry and a bowl of tomato soup.
and Dan, where are you located?
I'm in, excuse me, London, Ontario, Canada.
Awesome. Shawn?
Toronto, Canada.
And Becka?
Kitchener, Waterloo, Canada.
Okay.
Oh,
I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
Wow. You guys are like probably not burning alive right now up there. It's about 100,000 degrees down here.
Oh man, we just been getting a lot of thunderstorms and rain up here, and lots of humidity. Like when you live in between the Great Lakes or right at the Great Lakes, it's pretty soupy.
Oh, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, soupy weather.
Yeah, it's hot and it's humid here, so we get the best of both worlds.
Oh no.
Hmm.
Is there a break in sight?
It usually cools off around November 15th or so.
Oh man.
But then we'll get another heat wave, and it'll go back up to 90 something until December, and then the entire place freezes over, and we have like massive ice storms because we don't know how to deal with it.
Oh no.
It's really cool. We got the whole infrastructure thing down. Just let's deny it's even happening, and then hopefully it'll go away.
Not exactly how weather works. As again with
What are you talking about? That's exactly how weather works.
just with the research with weather and tornadoes and stuff, it's like, man,
Yeah.
how do we humans survive?
It's scary once you start like digging into it and figuring out what exactly is going on. Like, whoa, that's we should be a little more prepared or have some more foresight for those scenarios.
Yeah, since the planet can like murder you in various different ways, it's like, yeah, that's a good idea. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I got a kind of a weird question, little off topic, but it's about drawing at least. for instance, so Dan, the drawing that you're doing, it looks fairly large. Like, what's the size of that paper that you're working on?
Well, that's a great question. I have a pad over here. It is 19 by 24.
19 by 24. So that's a big honking piece there for you. Becca, are you working on A4?
I'm working on a 11 by 17. So going traditional comic book size with this one.
Yeah. And Shawn, what about you?
I don't know. I literally just picked up a big sheet of paper and cut this out.
Love it.
Nice. Looks like it's about 9.5 by 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then David, you're going all digital here because you're working on your book that you're working on.
Yeah.
So you've all got experience doing digital, if I'm not mistaken. You've all done analog or traditional. I guess because it's not actively in stream, but I've got what David's drawing and working on. And David, you're kind of zooming out and zooming in. And then Dan, you've got this massive piece in front of you. Do you find that when you guys work, or you folks work digital, you less often anyway, like get really close to what you're working on? Because you can just, make it huge by doing this? Or do you still like get your eyes right up to your screen and are like how does that impact what you're doing?
I find that I try and go backwards when I'm working analog. Like even in my sketchbook, I'll try it with 2 fingers and go like, it didn't work. Like I can't delete it. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, the thing about doing digital when I switched to doing digital was like, I could zoom in, I can move my paper around, I can do all kinds of stuff with it when I'm getting in there. That I couldn't do when I was drawing traditionally without having to move a giant panel around everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So
fair.
I also make less of a mess, and then my wife dislikes me less.
Fair.
When I work digitally, I use Clip Studio Paint, and one of the things I like about it is when you set up the document, even though you can use vector brushes, it caps the display of the image at the resolution that you've selected for the output. So if I'm working on a page that's 11 by 17 at 600 DPI, there's a certain point where if I zoom in, I see the pixelation. And I like that feature because it keeps me from going too down a rabbit hole where you just keep zooming and it's not going to actually print that way because it's just going to be so small. But similar to what Shawn was saying, I really like some of the advantages there where some of the stuff I've done, like for example, on this thing I'm working on right now, despite my best efforts, I wish I had more space up at the top here right now. And if I was working digitally, I could just slide this over, reposition, and keep working. And I do a lot of my pencils, even if I am doing digital inks, I do them physically first. But it's nice where you can piece things together. You can do them on separate sheets of paper, work out a character. One of the big things on the sort of cover divider image for Murgatroyd Nepenthe #4 is there's that little parade of all the characters walking along. One of the things that was important, I think I drew them in pairs, but I wanted to suggest the scale of the characters relative to each other because that adds like a little extra characterization, a bit of flavor to each of the characters. And a big part of that digitally before I started inking it was just having all the scans of the pencils and moving them around and tweaking them, 10%, 25%, whatever, just to make sure they all looked the same relative height to each other that I saw in my head.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I've found that being able to, you draw a character and then suddenly you're like, his hand is too small or his head is too big or whatever it is. You can just grab it and shrink it real quick, which makes a huge difference. And it just makes things go faster, for me anyway. I do miss drawing analog, and I draw a lot in my sketchbook and all that kind of stuff. But man, I can also be super mobile. So like I brought this to Oaxaca not that long ago, and I was trapped in a hotel room for like 4 days with the crud, and I was able to draw a whole bunch. You know what I mean?
Nice. We'll save the digital.
Yeah, I'm running into a similar problem right now where I'm like, yeah, it'd be a good idea to go analog. And I'm like, already twice, I'm like, where's the undo button? You know, just only if I can reposition this head, but it's like, nope, here comes the eraser.
Yeah.
But, you know, so yeah, digital, to echo what was said previously, of working faster, yes. For sure. But at the same time, like, I like to go back to analog every once in a while, just as a good exercise.
Absolutely.
And then it's also nice to have, like, you have an original piece of artwork when you go to a Comic-Con, and people are like, oh, what's this? This is so cool. You know, and sometimes they'll buy it from you, and I'm like, okay. Or, you know, I don't always bring, like, usually if I bring my originals, it's just to display them. Like, to this day, I don't know how comfortable I am with selling my Gehenna Death Valley pages, but all the covers are gone. So I'm like,
Oh.
yeah. So I'm kind of warming up to that idea. But at the same time, I'm like, it's a piece of history that I did. But I don't know. It's an evolving thought process.
Well, that's actually something I was always really curious about. Is just, especially when it's like a comic that you've made completely of your own, and I cannot. Actually, I can't imagine. I've just never experienced the amount of time, effort, from like ideation to fully writing a script, storyboarding to actually putting it on the page, inking, coloring, all that stuff. Like that's a crazy amount of work to have to do. And I always imagine, like, wouldn't you be super attached to all of that and not want to get rid of it? But then I've heard other artists say, like, oh yeah, no, I like selling all my originals. Like, and I guess in this case, Becka, you're like my perfect sort of case study. Like, when you sold those, was it like a sad thing? Were you really happy that someone enjoyed them and took them? Was it a mixed bag?
At first it was like shock when I'm just like, what? You actually want this piece of artwork? You know, because in my mind, people want to go for something familiar, but it's like, oh, you want this original character I created, you know, with the covers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, so it starts off as a good feeling. And then I'm like, to this day, I have zero regrets selling those covers, but it's just the interiors where I'm a bit apprehensive with, because I like to keep something back. But at the same time, I'm like, part of me is like, oh, it'd be nice to get rid of some paper, you know, I have extra space.
Oh, okay.
Here. But then, I don't know. Like, I haven't quite made up my mind yet. And also, I have a hard time figuring out how much would I sell this for, you know?
Fair. Like,
Yeah.
I guess that's another thing where, like, I see online, oh, here's a great example. Recently, and I guess this is kind of like a huge example, but it's an example. I'm a big fan of the Grant Morrison, Dave McKean, Batman Arkham Asylum book. And recently, the original painting of the dust jacket for the hardcover release of it by Dave McKean went up for auction. And it ended up selling like 20 grand. And like, that's really cool. But like, yeah, like, how do you even begin pricing what your art is worth, or is worth, I should say? Because yeah, like you're trying to put a price point on the materials, not only your time to make the thing, but also your experience. Like,
It also, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
no, please do.
Yeah, it also depends, like, how you sell. Like, I'm still working on the art of selling my work, you know, or being the salesman, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I try to sell something, like, I have to work a little bit harder for it, depending on what venue it is. And then if I have one of my friends helping me who has sales experience, you know, I go away briefly for some reason to grab food or whatever. And he's texting me like, hey, do you have any, like, bags because I'm just selling one of your originals right now. And I'm like, what are you telling these people? So it's giving your secrets, So I don't know. If part of it is like people's perceptions of you, like, or if it's, I don't know. I would like to know about the psychology of selling your work, pricing your work, and how does it all work? That's still.
Man, I'm telling you, I am the worst salesperson ever. I've done several Comic Cons in the last year, and my buddy Dan Price, who does a comic called Bigfoot Knows Karate, that fool sells all his comics. He's selling like hundreds of them. He's like, "Oh yeah, I made booth feedback in 2 hours." I'm like, "What do you mean? I sold 4 comics all day." Like,
Yeah.
and how much the price stuff for? How much you want to pay me? It's $20. I don't know. I'm really terrible at all that stuff. I'm much more. I identify as a hermit.
Yeah.
Their pronouns.
Likewise.
Yeah, I'm like the weird snail who would rather live under the sea inside of a shell and no one would talk to him, and he would just draw superheroes fighting each other all day.
Yeah.
People ask me about my comic book. They're like, "Why should I buy it?" And I'm like, "Because you want to. If you don't want to, that's cool too. You could just not buy it."
Yeah.
And then I'll get sad and I'll cry myself to sleep tonight. But other than that, it's not going to bother you. So that's cool.
Yeah. Because like my thought process is like, what you were just saying, like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to be pushy, but it's like, well, I got to have dinner tonight. But, and then like when, we, like the friend, when I have him along or when he, and it happens and it's like, how do you do it? And then he makes it sound so easy, but he's explained it to me at least twice, but I still don't get it.
I have some friends who work in sales, and they are amazing at this. Dude sells me stuff I don't want all the time. I'm like, I don't want that log. Why did I buy this log from you?
Yeah.
It's big, it's heavy, it's wood. I get it. I should have. I know. I should have already had one.
Yeah.
What about you, Shawn? How do you figure out what your original pages of your art is worth?
I'm not allowed to talk about that because I get in trouble all the time for selling my art for too cheap. Every show I go to,
can confirm.
Yeah, exactly. Every show I go to.
I've witnessed Shawn getting yelled at dinner. I'm not naming names, but it's like, Shawn, you gotta up your price. Respect yourself as an artist. I'm paraphrasing here, but he gets an earful. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. But my theory going into this was, I don't ever want to see a single one of my pages again after I've drawn it. I just want to get rid of it. I'm done. I want to move on. Don't like looking at my stuff. But the whole idea was when I first started off and I was looking for work and decided that this is something I wanted to do, I said I was going to keep my page rate very low, like, maybe $40 to $50 per page kind of thing. But I would have a piece of physical art that I could sell afterwards to make up the cost that I lost drawing the page. So if I was lucky enough to draw a page and then sell it, I could be looking at $100. And, personally, for somebody just starting off in comics, I was just like, hey, that's not bad. Like, that's, I don't know if I'd feel that way today, and I hope I wouldn't. But, yeah, it's a little different today. But back then, it seemed like a smart thing to do. So, but I guess I kind of didn't evolve my price enough for certain people to be okay with that.
For anyone watching, then, Shawn, who maybe is trying to figure out how to price their work and stuff like that, why do you feel that you wish you had not done the pricing the way you had, where it was like $40 per page and then you could sell it for $100?
Well,
why?
I actually think I'm glad that I did that back in the day, because that to me was a great way to start off. I don't know if I'd recommend it, because obviously you have to value your own art as kind of, I don't know, you gotta do that yourself. It's hard for people to tell you what it is and isn't worth it. But I honestly think that if you are making comics on paper and you try to sell your art for a certain price. The market will tell you whether or not that price is acceptable or good or bad, or the right price or the wrong price. I think you'll know that after long enough. Either you'll, you may be in for like a rude awakening if you try and sell your pages for $400 when you're first starting out. But you may not be, because you might just be that damn good. So, it's very subjective. It's hard to say.
I just Googled it. I had no idea how much I was supposed to charge. So
That's smart.
my wife was like, "Yeah, Google's wrong. You need to charge more than that." And I was like, "I don't know. I don't really know what I'm doing." And I mean, look at me. I'm obviously a schmuck. She's like, "No, dude, what are you?" Oh, she gets so frustrated with me.
So it sounds like almost resoundingly, all of you need to value your art more and charge more, or maybe just charge more, because it sounds like you all actually love your art that you do.
Yes.
That seems fair.
All of us need to value our artwork and, I don't know, sell it for a lot of money.
Yes.
Because I like to eat and pay my bills. That's the goal.
I hate paying my bills, but I like to eat.
Yes. Eating is fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're about, well, not about, I can see it on the timer. We're like 42 minutes in. My typical interview is like an hour, so normally 19 or 18 more minutes. Shawn, it looks like you've blown through and you're basically done. Dan, I'm not sure how far you are, but it's coming along quite well. David, I know you're just actively working on a book. And Becka, you've got looks like you're getting into some pretty detailed parts there on your cover.
Yeah, it's not gonna lie, it's been like, of course I'm struggling with this one and it's a live stream, but that's okay. I did this to myself. I am using a photo reference and there's like interesting shadows going on, so I'm just trying on one hand not copy the photo like the reference, but just trying to make it something. And I thought I had something different, and again, where digital helps, I could have just moved the head and reposition it, but it's like, nope, this is the bed I made and I'm lying on it. So but so this piece, it's quite simple in concept, so it's going to be mostly in black and white. So it's just knowing like where to put things on the face and the environment. It'll make more sense once you see it, the final product.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I said, we're 17 minutes away from an hour. I'm good to keep going past the hour. I also appreciate some of you may have dinners you want to get to, other things to be doing, or whatever. So if we hit 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Central Time, and you need to go, just do your thing. Like I said, I'm happy to sit, chit chat, because this is very fun for me.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just wanted to point out that I really appreciate that. It's been eye-opening hanging out with other artists who are drawing. You guys are horrible at conversation while you're drawing, just like me. You're like,
I'm glad you said it, David. I'm very self-conscious about that. Every time Konrad would ask a question, I'd be like, well, now I'm answering and there's nothing interesting happening on the page. People are looking at like me not working at a drawing.
Yeah, that's, I don't, maybe if there was more alcohol involved, it might change things, but it's like the middle of the day here, so,
I get, this is probably one of the earliest shows I've done, and I was just going to say, normally I would say, yeah, whatever, grab a drink, whatever. I've got mine. It's just water, but, whatever you want to do, but maybe a little early.
That exact reason is actually why I started like streaming art on Twitch, because I got asked to do a few sketch duels at conventions, and I was like, "Good God, no! You want me to draw in front of people?
It's terrifying.
That's crazy." Yeah, but kind of like hopping on Twitch and doing some live streaming got me a little bit more custom. I still there's still nerves and a little bit of anxiousness, but I don't know. I feel like that's always going to happen, and that's fine. Like, I don't mind it so much now, but it sucks.
It's
So-
like being an awkward, nerdy artist.
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so funny to me that you mentioned that, because like for me as someone who I like talking about comics, ergo what I do, but very much so not being good at drawing at all,
Nice.
and just doodling, having fun while I'm trying to control the stream here. Watching you folks do what you do, and like it's incredible. Right. So like for me, my brain's like, I get me being anxious about showing my drawings, but like all of you're so good. So I guess maybe the question there is, do you find that as you've gotten objectively better at art, and I can say all of you are objectively great at art, did you get more or less sensitive to being watched make your art?
I got much less sensitive to. I mean, like I just said, it was just, it used to be I couldn't draw in front of people. I would go to conventions and just sit there, and I just couldn't do it. And then when I started doing it, I started very slowly, and my hands would be shaky, and I'd be sweating right there in the middle of the convention floor. But the more you do it, I don't know. It's just like making art. Like you just get better.
I found that at conventions I was so terrible at selling stuff, and no one cared about my booth at all, that I would just start drawing out of boredom. So, and since no one cared at all that I was drawing, or that I was an artist or anything like that, they're like, "Hey, which way is William Shatner's signing?" I'm like, that way. Like that's how I started drawing at conventions, just out of sheer boredom. And then every once in a while, people would ask me to draw them something. I have a question. What's the most terrifying thing that someone's asked you to draw at a convention?
Oh.
I don't know that I have one, but I have one that I hope no one ever asks me to draw, which is a horse.
Like I get that so much. Holy smokes.
That's like my nightmare.
Yeah.
Horses, dude. If you get the head wrong, the muzzle just wrong, it's just gonna be all bad.
How many joints are in the legs? What direction are they all going?
Backwards. Every direction is got to be backwards, no matter what you do. I had a lady ask me to draw a picture of her daughter, and her daughter was physically disabled, and she had just passed away.
Oh my gosh!
Oh no.
Yeah, she wanted, and her daughter was like, I don't know, 10 or something like that. And I was just like, I instantly started pouring with sweat because I just put up a sign because I wasn't selling any comics. I was like, I'll draw anything you want for $40. And she walks up, she was like, here's $40, draw my daughter. And I was like, oh, what?
It's like not what I meant, but okay.
Yeah, I did it though. And when she came and picked up the drawing, she started crying and everything, which was all
sweet.
super awkward.
That's sweet.
Man, that was nerve-wracking.
That sounds almost like what someone would dare their friend to go and request once they saw your stuff.
Yeah.
Like, let's troll them. Let's tell them this is what we want.
Yeah. I hope that doesn't happen in the future. It probably will. Somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, I know what to do to mess this guy."
Brutal. Okay, I gotta ask, whose dog?
That's mine. Sorry.
No, don't be. What kind of dog is it?
She's a Labradoodle.
Ah!
Yeah. Yeah. Just it doesn't help that the windows are open either. So she's right next to this room. But it's okay. She's allowed.
She's doing her job. She's a dog.
Yep, she's
She's
doing her job.
Oh, the dog just shut up.
Whatever. She's a good girl. Anyone else have pets?
You just woke my dog up with your dog barking.
Sorry.
I was just wandering around the kitchen like.
My dog, fortunately, is upstairs. Otherwise, he would be barking too.
I don't even. Oh, that's why there's somebody in the driveway.
Oh,
Anyway, it's not. It's I don't know who it is, but whatever.
your dog's doing her job. That's
Yep.
all good.
Yep.
That's a good title for a horror comic. There's somebody in the driveway.
Ooh.
Yep. Oh, yes.
Attack mode.
Yeah. Something important. Normally, I would do this like 15 minutes into an interview. Obviously, we're doing something a little fun and different today. I do want each of you to be able to say what it is that you typically work on, where you can get where people can get your stuff. So we'll go clockwise from the top. So Dan, you happen to be in the 12 o'clock position.
Yeah.
Dan, yeah. What's your name? What's your book? Where can people get it?
I'm actually somewhat prepared for this. So my name is Dan Barrick, and this is my current book. What? There. Okay. Yes? Okay. There we go. This is all mirrored. There we go. So my current book is Murgatroyd and Nepenthe. It's a weird adventure comic. And it follows these two characters, Murgatroyd and Nepenthe. Murgatroyd basically has no idea what's going on. He meets all kind of weird beings, and he has some protection from Nepenthe, who has substantially more ethereal powers than he does because he has absolutely none. So it's kind of a combination of my interest in like traditional cartoons, funny books, that kind of stuff, and experimental art techniques. So some of the stuff that kind of makes an appearance here is there's some use of the cut-up technique, which has been used by people like William S. Burroughs and David Bowie, as well as the oblique strategies of Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt. So best place to get it is to go to dsbarrick.com, and if you click a link there, it will bring you to the store that has the book in a print, and there's also a digital edition of it that is all the same stuff. Did I cover everything?
I think so. Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
And it's DS Barrick, Barrick, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. I've misspelled that. Bear with me. Like so. That way people can go and get
Perfect. Amazing.
Yeah.
Technology.
Gotta love it. And Shawn, tell us about yourself. What's your name? What are your books, and where can people get them?
Shawn Daley. You can find most of my books, to be honest, just by Googling them. I think so. I have a few books out with Source Point Press. If you're looking for those ones, they have a website. You can find them there. I do have a lot of self-published books, and in that case, I tend to just tell people to, message me on social media because it's just easier. I find if you just message me and tell me what book you want, I can ship it to you for much cheaper than you'd be able to find anywhere else. And I find that just cutting out the middleman saves everybody a little bit of money. So yeah, just message me. I'll hook you up. I got books. The only one that's going to be hard is Better Place because that was published through IDW. So you have to go to them to get it. But yeah, that's it. I think ShawnDaley.ca is the best place to go for stuff.
Beautiful. And David, we'll jump over to you now. What's your name? What are your books? Where can people get them?
My name is David Lujan. It's a very ethnic name, though I don't speak Spanish very well. It's like a sick joke with my family. My books right now, I've got two books that I've got Uriko and I've got Narita. And I'm waiting actually in the mail Uriko 2, the pre-press edition is supposed to be showing up today at some point in the mail. And you can go to naritacomic.com. DavidLujanArt.com will send you somewhere.
Oh,
I don't know where. It's going to send you into like the dark web or something. It's a thing. I've been paying for it. I don't know what that means, but it's probably like a carbon-made site or something weird. But yeah, the comic, that's the one. Yeah, just like a link tree that's got all of my thingamies. You can get both of those books either directly from me or from lesserknowncomics.com. Mark Bernal's got the hookup there with all the LKC books. What else was I going to say? Yeah, I'm mostly active on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm on other things too. Just hit me up if you want to chat comics, or if you need a comic to be made, I will make a comic for you.
nice. I dig it. And Becka, what's your name? What are your books, and where can people get them?
All right, so I'm Becka, and my books. Okay, I brought them here. There they are. All right, so, okay, so I am did a couple of horror comics. One of them is, hang on, there was a sticky on my book. I am so on the ball today, like for preparedness. It's,
Just please don't just lay that book down on the ink, though. Please.
Thank you. You are the tornado.
And here is my pajama pants. All right, this is like, wow. Okay, here's my book, Gehenna Death Valley.
Love it.
Yes, so it's like Scooby-Doo Goes to Hell, except there's no dog, no mystery machines, and as you can see, the monsters are 100% real, and it won an award in 2020, the year that everything fell apart. But yeah, so it's a complete story, and it was successfully funded on Kickstarter, because when the awards happened, I was like, oh man, I only have less than 20 books left. So a Kickstarter happened, it overfunded, and behold, very nice book. And I will have these with me at the upcoming shows and conventions coming up this year. And the cover I'm working on now is for, the Wormhole Club Tragedy, which starts out with a spontaneous combustion, true crime, and there's a mysterious entity going about taking revenge, and we don't know why that is the case. And issue 2 came out in the spring. Here we are. Here's the mysterious entity, Vortex, who I am actually drawing right now for cover for issue 3. And yeah, unlike Gehenna, which is in full color, here we go. Look at that. Wormhole Club, I'm trying to go with a manga-ish approach to it with making pages in black and white.
Does it read backwards?
Unfortunately, no. I wish I could do it, but it'd be too confusing for the market.
Yeah, I was going to say.
yeah, if only. But no. So it's from front to back, traditionally. And you can get my stuff on thebecka.com/shop. And you can also follow me on the socials. It's on my website on where I will be next and upcoming projects and artwork and all the things. And yeah, I think that's everything.
Beautiful. We love all the things. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Just to confirm, I got everybody correct. I didn't forget Shawn.
No, you got me.
Perfect.
Well, when Becka was saying earlier that she could work on her salespersonship, you have some technology that didn't even occur to me, which is opening the book and showing what it looks like inside. That was really smart.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yay!
how did I not think to do that? That's so smart.
Well, it's kind of
of your books real quick.
Yeah, hold on. Oh, I guess you got to back up there, Davey.
Quick.
Awesome.
The vampire book.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like the ink work.
Bear with me, Dan. Hold on.
I don't even know where I am in the book. Here it is. I'm not doing a good job. I don't know how to turn pages. There's that spread I was talking about earlier.
Oh, nice.
Different scale stuff. Anyway.
Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna get in on this too since we're all doing it.
Yeah, get in on it. Yeah.
This is the most recent book. Some of it's black and white, most of it's in color. I try to paint all the pages in watercolor for the most part. It takes some time, though. It's become something that I don't want to stop doing, but at the same time, digital brushes look more and more appealing every day. But we'll see what happens.
Love it. One question that did come to mind earlier. You guys were talking about doing digital or analog or traditional, and some of the advantages while you're doing traditional of being able to, if you were doing analog or digital, hit Control-Z, just resize, zoom in. Is there anything that you find while doing digital that you go, oh, you know what, in traditional, this would be so much easier because of X, Y, Z? Like, is there anything that does that for any of you?
Absolutely. Yeah, like doing a dry brush thing, like a James Heron kind of thing. You dip your brush and you get it just the right amount of saturation, and then you smush it on the page. You move it all around, and you can smush it with your hands and become really tactile with it. Digitally, to try and emulate that is a nightmare. It does not lend itself to. It's like, it's on or off. It's zeros and ones. It's a robot. So it's like, tell me what to do, and I'm like, but I need you to just do the thing for me the way a paintbrush would when I smush it, and it doesn't really react that way. So definitely analog 100% in that regard.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Another thing that I prefer about traditional is I start to get really anxious about the having to update my tools.
Yeah.
I need to start budgeting now to buy a new computer just to make sure that when I actually need one, I have the money put away for that. And I'm fortunate that the tools that I use I appreciate that they're not subscription based. So it's kind of like you make the investment and you have them as long as they work for. But just knowing, that someone can't make a change to the tool that I'm using without breaking into my house and tampering with my pens and brushes is reassuring from time to time. I had one point, and I don't know if it was just that I missed something, but the scanner that I used to scan my pages, at some point, I don't know if I lost track of the settings or if there was a firmware update, but the option to scan at 600 DPI just kind of disappeared. I could still access it if I was scanning from my computer, but my scanner and my computer are on different floors of my house. So usually what I do is I'll just go through a bunch. There's the USB port in the scanner. I'll just scan a bunch of pages. But for a while there, the setting to scan at 600 DPI disappeared. It was capped at 300, and I would have to walk up and down stairs for every page to scan it. And it just creeped me out that, a company could do a firmware update and then I have to change my workflow based on something happening somewhere else. Now, that said, I also get paranoid that they're going to discontinue the pens that I'm using and the ink that I'm using. And I don't know if you guys have heard, there's this great story about Charles Schultz when they discontinued the pen that he used to ink peanuts with. The company went out of business, so he bought all the remaining stock, which apparently was just thousands of nibs. But he was so scared that he would run out that he just had to have them all.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's like if you can do it, why not, right?
Yeah.
Well, when I finally decided to jump to digital and I bought an iPad, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna buy it. It's $1,000. Oh God, this Apple Pencils, it works really well. It's so cool. I immediately sat on it, and there's a giant crack down the middle of my screen, and I've been drawing like that since day one with a giant crack.
Oh no.
I haven't, I was like, that was it. That was my one investment. I don't have enough money to buy another one, so
That's the most tragic thing ever.
Yeah, that's
it's
rough.
really cool. I was like, is that a crack? That is a crack. Oh my God, there's a crack. Who cracked my screen? My wife and my daughter were like, that was your butt, definitely.
Oh, I am so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay, man. You got to work with those handicaps. You know what I'm saying?
Persevere, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I didn't realize because I was getting caught up in the conversation. We've had a number of comments come in. So right at the start of the stream, actually, Victor Santiago said, "Fuck yeah, Shawn Daley."
Oh, hey, Victor. Thank you.
Kevin Manklow, who's also been on the show, does the book Bestiary. Says, "Looking good, folks," at about 5:17.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actual Dracula, another YouTuber, says, "Good evening" at about 5:24, and then followed up with, not too long ago, many years ago, someone commissioned me to draw them Lion-O from Thundercats, pleasuring himself. I mean, hey, if they're gonna pay you,
I'll draw anything for $40.
And then actually, Actual Dracula then asked, "Will any of you be at Fan Expo?" Fan Expo Canada, I'm assuming, is what he means.
I'll be at Fan Expo Boston and Fan Expo Canada coming up.
Cool. I'll be at Fan Expo Canada as well.
Yay!
Yay.
Dan,
I will not. That's really far away.
I will not be there, even though Toronto is pretty close.
Will
He
you,
has a better excuse than I do on that one.
fair. Will you go as like you to enjoy the show?
Pardon me?
Will you go?
I don't think this year. I'd like to go again. It's just not in the plans for this summer.
Fair.
It's been years since I've gone, so it would be fun to go again.
Well, I will very excitedly say I have applied to do a panel as well as applied for press pass. So
Ooh,
Nice.
yay!
yeah, so I will be going. I'm just not sure if it's just going to be me paying and going as a dude, me hosting a panel, or me covering it. And also at 5:29, Daniel Goodwin said, "Oh, that's a good idea, DS." Unfortunately, I don't know what he's referring to from 38 minutes ago, but
Oh, wait.
Well, all of my ideas are good, so I can't. And just for anyone tuning in, that was a joke. I am hopefully not actually that conceited. I have a story that I often tell my students about. I try to warn them in advance that if I seem like I'm not serious about something, or that I may be too serious about something and it seems ridiculous, that they should ask me about whether I'm really serious. So I had one year that students were not cleaning up after themselves, and it was just really messy. There were a bunch of materials around our classroom. And I told them that one of the grade 9 classes, somebody had to go to the hospital because they had inhaled too much glitter. And some of the students thought I was being serious at that point rather than just being ridiculous. So
I believed you.
yeah.
From the moment you open your mouth, I've met some kids that my daughter's going into 9th grade next year. So I mean, kids eat glitter. They eat glue when they're young, and when they get older, they graduate to glitter. It's just
yeah, to be honest, David is completely right, because I have a story that is much worse than that of what someone was trying to do just a few months ago, but we're not outside of the statute of limitations on it, so I don't want to out what they were trying to do. If we do a stream in a couple of years again, I'll tell you guys the story. It was but it involved warning someone that if you try to do a line of clay, that you could get silicosis. So don't do it.
Yeah. Dry it and then crush it first, and then you got to get it real fine. Otherwise, just tell them to stick to cayenne pepper. It's way healthier.
Oh,
It'll clear you out.
God. David, quick question for you. Earlier, I thought I saw you were drawing Crocodile Dundee. Is that? Am I way off base?
Yeah, I'm drawing these dudes in the safari who are hunting this centurion who just popped out from out of time, and this guy is like hunting Pokemon style. He's like, yeah, let's get after it. And then he pulls out his knife, and then they square off, and then there's this massive fight scene. So yeah, that's it's not Crocodile Dundee, but it's based loosely on. That's not a knife. This is a knife,
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. And well, I appreciate that. Like I said, Shawn, it looks like you're done. You've got a full background, fully inked. Who is it that you've drawn, Shawn?
This is the main character from a book called Samurai Grandpa that I did in 2017, I think. But the book here, I kind of have it right beside me because I've had to reference it all week to remember how to draw him, just because it's been so long. But this is kind of like we're drawing. In this book, this first book, we drew the end of his life. And in the next book, we're kind of drawing a chapter that takes place earlier on. This first book is about him being a grandfather, obviously, as the name might imply. But the next book is about him becoming a father. And that's because Easton, the writer for this, he recently became a father 4 years ago.
Oh.
So we discussed making another book. And the story that we decided was, going to be something very personal to Easton, which was him being a father for the first time, while managing this job as a samurai assassin, and just kind of learning a thing or two about sympathy and empathy, being a cold-blooded killer. So, yeah, that one is going to be announced, I think, Friday officially. And then, yeah, we're just going to go right into it.
Love it.
I'm try not to skip a beat.
That's super cool. So I guess you're not drawing Samurai Grandpa, you're drawing Samurai Father?
Samurai Father, yes. That's right, yeah. For some of the story, we actually ended up, when we discussed this book, ended up writing like a 3-book series, which is kind of very quickly over a weekend writing session. So this kind of became a bit of a trilogy. So once we wrap this next book up, that's going to set up a 3rd book where he's older again to cap off the Grandpa trilogy.
Cool. And Dan,
Yeah.
what are you drawing?
Well, I was trying to brainstorm some ideas that involved. I think initially, Konrad, when you pitched sort of the food or drink idea, coffee had been one of the things he had proposed. So I thought a skull cup would be fun because I like drawing cartoon skulls, and then sort of to highlight the confusing aspects of the book and how Murgatroyd is often quite unsure of what's going on. I thought that having him getting dunked on a tea biscuit into the coffee by Nepenthe might be fun. He's up in the corner here, but I haven't quite got to her face yet.
Love it. That is so cool. And Becca, you mentioned earlier you're doing a cover, but who are you drawing?
I am drawing Forticia Vortex, mostly in silhouette. So my idea is combining her head with a landscape piece. So, like I said, I'm just winging it. So it could be disastrous by the end of it, but at the same time, like, it's at that stage where you think it sucks until you finish it and you're like, yeah, okay, you got it. So, and her eyes are not going to stay like that. I only colored them in like that because it didn't look right. So I'm like, I'll come back with it later because I've got white ink and like markers and stuff that can go over ink.
You're so tech savvy. I love it.
Oh yeah, professional AF. That's okay.
Well, to speak on tech savvy, once again, by nearly a full 5 minutes, actually a little bit more, I've missed. Daniel Goodwin got back to us with, regarding his earlier comment in your good idea, Dan, Daniel Goodwin says, good idea comment was about working digital. If you start to see pixels, you've zoomed in too much.
Thank you.
So here's something that I've always kind of been curious about. I've always heard A4 was sort of the standard size for comics, which is the 11 by 17, because then you can scan it and it will digitize well down to the 8.5 by 11 that is a standard comic book,
or 6 by 10 for the floppies.
Yeah. Oh, is that what that is? Oh, okay.
Yeah, approximately. But you can do it in any different sizes, like the manga sized or the North American traditional floppy size.
Well, so you mentioned the manga size. When it comes to working in a book size that is not the standard floppy, like Dan, your book very much is not. David, Uriko, as I understand it, is sized smaller, and Shawn, your books have sort of varied in size. Becka, I believe your books, to my knowledge, have all been standard American size, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly just due to convenience, because the printer I use is actually in my hometown, so just to make things easier, I'm like, yeah, just keep everything the same size.
Would that by chance be? Oh, I'm a horrible interview host. Wow, what's the name of your printer, please?
Studio Comics Press, Alfonso Espinos. Yeah.
Yes, Alfonso is fantastic. I did an interview with him.
Oh,
guy. Yeah,
he's great. Yeah.
So back to the question: when it comes to then working in a different page size, do you still start your drawing in 11 by 17 or A4 or whatever, or have you all found ways of, if I want to draw in whatever format, I'm just going to draw and go from there?
Well, that's how I got in the pickle with Uriko and Narita, that I just started drawing, and then I realized, this has to turn into a comic book. But then I thought, because I didn't know anything about comic books at all, it's 8.5 by 14, so it's a legal size piece of paper. So I could go to Kinko's and just Xerox copy it and fold in half, staple it, and then I've got a comic book. And that's why I made it that size. And then I came to realize, whoops, that's not a standard comic size. And then I just ran with it. So
interesting.
I work on 11 by 17 as well. Although the book is smaller than standard size, it is proportionate to it. So it's the same aspect ratio as a traditional floppy. It's just cheaper to print it smaller. But I like doing drawings like this are fun. I like working really big, and it actually is easier, I find, for me to draw large. But much like David was saying, and David, I apologize, I think I've pronounced your name incorrectly several times in the chat tonight. So
all white dudes do it. It's fine.
What's that?
All white dudes do it. It's fine. It's cool. It's okay.
I like you were saying, just the convenience of working in a format that has some standardization. We're trying to scan anything that's larger than 11 by 17 is really difficult. And previously, when I had only an 8.5 by 11 inch max scan size, that was a real hassle. I was doing some comic strips at the time, and I would have to scan them in chunks and reassemble panels, which was not a good use of my time. But it would be fun if I didn't have to worry about scanning to draw bigger. But it would also take a heck of a lot longer. And then there's the issue with, because with this project, there's a lot of cross-hatching with the pen stuff. I'd start to be worried about just losing some of that. I know that if with the main pen that I use is this platinum carbon desk pen, it's quite fine. And I know that it reproduces fine down to that. I think they call it a royal size paperback from 11 by 17 without, losing detail.
Interesting. What about you, Shawn? When it comes to working in traditional and then scanning things in, given that the sort of standard is the standard floppy size, do you find that you're working on like a standardized 11 by 17 page when you're typically drawing your books, or have you found other workarounds?
I'm almost always drawing on 11 by 17. I tend to buy these huge sheets. It's like they're 18 by 32 or something, sheets of watercolor paper, and then I just cut those down to 11 by 17. That tends to do the job, but it took a long time to figure out what brand actually worked well for the styles that I was working in, because some of them are too, I don't know what the word is, toothy, I guess, where a lot of times I was using like crow quill pens, they would get stuck in the fibers and then splat ink everywhere. And so I had to find one that was had a bit of a softer texture to it. And once I decided on that, it's kind of been smooth sailing since. But that took a lot of time to figure out, which I guess looking back on it was kind of fun. I mean, it was nice experimenting with a number of different types of papers and textures.
When I was in college, in art school, there was always this focus on Reeves BFK or Reeves Heavyweight or what are you going to print on, because I studied printmaking, and I didn't realize that I could go to this town called OK Paper Company, and they would sell me big pieces of 26 by 40 paper for almost nothing. You can screen print on. You can draw on them. They're all archival, so there's no sizing in them at all. Like you can do all kinds of crazy stuff on this really cheap paper, and you can get it all different rates too. So typically, if I'm going to draw something huge, I'll either just use Bristolboard or I'll use one of those big ass pieces, and I can tear it down. I'll draw like huge, and then I'll tear it down afterwards. So I'm like, oh, I need more room over here or whatever. I've got more room, and then I kind of crop it to the size I want after I'm done. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Huh. All right, well, you know what? Talking about paperweights and stuff like that, in the last live stream I did quite some time ago now, a question I asked was, if someone's watching and they're just starting out in art, they don't know, what they should pick up. I guess because you've got, everyone here has pretty well got experience in both traditional and digital, on both ends. If you were going to recommend for someone to get specifically into comics, what would be say the essentials under $100 that would hook them up for traditional? And I don't know, I can't say that for the same type of question for digital, because you need to buy some sort of tablet or Cintiq or some sort of device that allows you to draw on a computer. But So yeah, under $100 for traditional, and what's like a basic go-to setup that you would use for digital? You know what, Dan? Well, again, you're at my 12 o'clock still, so we'll start with you.
The first thing I would get is some paper. So like starting out, regular like printer paper is not terrible to ink on with a brush. I feel like you might get similar to what Shawn was saying with like the snags, with especially if you're using a fine pen. But I would see if like your local office supply place has some cardstock that's 11 by 17. I used to get. This is exactly what I was talking about. I'm a little anxious. I've run out of the brand of this Lynx digital cardstock that I've been using, which has a really nice finish. It takes the ink really well. And it was like $40 for a ream of 250 sheets, which I used to order from Staples, and they've discontinued it. So I need to look for something new. I would avoid the Strathmore stuff if cost is an issue, but if it's not, then that's pretty decent. And I found out that the vellum finish seems to be easier to get, but the reverse side of the vellum is actually smooth. So if you want a smoother surface, you can flip it over and it will work. But aside from the paper stuff, I would just get like a giant thing of Speedball black. It's cheap. This one says it was $16, and I've been working on this for a few years. Just like figure out whether you like a brush or a pen. So just like the standard dip pen holder that's like $5, and grab some different nibs that you like. Maybe try out, like Shawn was talking about, the little Croquill Hunt 102 if you like a really fine line. And then I like for inking the Winsor Newton Cotman line, which is just like their cheap watercolor brushes, work okay for me. But really inspect the bristles when you get in there, because some of them are kind of funky. Like make sure it actually has a decent point to it. And I would say buy a few at a time. I heard a story once that Dan Clowes is super picky about his brushes and will buy like the Winsor Newton Series 7 and not even use some of the ones because they don't give a sharp enough line. But I do find if I buy like maybe 2 or 3 of them at a time, that there's some that work a bit better, and the other ones are pretty good for spawning blacks. So I would say just like keep it simple and figure out what the cartoonists that you like, not like what specific tools they use, but try to figure out if they use brushes or pens, because that will dictate, like if you're, I don't know, you're super into Todd McFarlane for some reason and you are trying to ink like him with a brush, it's just not going to happen. You need to get that little Hunt 102 and get in there and get those scratchy lines, or, if you like someone who has that really lush, brushy style, like, I don't know, like the, like Paul Pope or somebody, a bigger, brushier look will require a brush. So I hope that's a decent set of ideas.
Yeah, I love the specificity too. Like you mentioned, not only the artist, but you referenced the specific utensil they're using. Cool. We'll go counterclockwise this time. So David, if someone was going to get into doing comics and comic art, what would be like $100 starter set for traditional that you'd recommend they grab?
I would go grab yourself a pad of bristleboard. You can get it double size, so when you need to scan it or take a photograph of it or whatever, it kind of breaks down to 11 by 17 or double that. You want to work big. Try and work bigger than you think you want to work. Like don't work at this size. Like if you're going to be drawing a comic book that's normal size comic book, you want your piece of paper to be huge. That way you can get in there and do as much detail as possible. It's tantamount to zoom in on an iPad, right? I would do that. I would also go buy yourself go on jetpens.com. They got some great stuff there. I love pen holder. It's awesome. This nib is BS. It's just holds a bunch of ink, and it's great for doing lettering, and it's great for doing fat outlines. If you want some detail stuff, I got these nibs from Jet Pens. You probably can't read it at all, but they're awesome. Like, you can do tons of detail. They hold ink really well. Also, yeah, what was said before about brushes versus pens. Brushes, I tend to go and start using brushes a lot more than I thought I would when I first started inking and doing traditional. So try it. Try all different things, because your main thing is, most people think, oh, I'm going to go buy a pen and I'm going to draw with a pen. Nah, dude, you're probably not. You're probably going to be dipping into a vat of ink. You're probably going to get an actual brush that's got some bristles on it, and you're going to be smushing it around on the page. That's how all your favorite art are getting their awesome textures and whatnot. But that's where I would start. The other tool that was really, really helpful, and I don't know where mine is there's a lettering tool that you can buy. It's a little somebody here knows what I'm talking about. It's a little plastic thingamajig with a little circle, and you can move from side to side, and you can use it to trace lines. That's the thing. The thing he has the thing. Dealing with bobbin. That's the official term for it. Right? Bobbin, pretty sure.
Ames guide.
Yeah, you can call it that too if you want to, but where I come from, it's called a dealing with bobbin. But that thing is awesome because it keeps your letters the exact size that you want, so you can have spacing and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's all for measuring out, your boxes and all of that good stuff. There's other lining tools as lining the edges of your don't have it here, but there's a little tool that you can get that usually comes on the end of a compass, and it looks like this. Like that. Oh, yeah, you dip it in your ink, and you can open or close it, get it finer, and then that's what you use to make your edges for all of your framing for your panels. The thing you need though is a ruler, like so, that's got a little edge on it. Yeah, that's the thing. He's got all this.
I don't know what the name is though. You'll have to give me the technical name.
That's the liner tool for architects and things. Back in the map makers used to use them. But with this ruler, if you can see, I don't know if you can see the edge. It's got cork on it, right?
Yeah.
So when you lay it flat on paper and you run your pen along it to make a straight line, it won't bleed underneath there and mess all your stuff up. So go get one of these little helix guys. It's great. Or get a T-square. Those things will, in a piece of wood, just a little piece of wood. And then you tape your stuff to the thing, make sure it's centered. Then you got a T-square so you can plot out everything. Boom. Yeah, that's what I say.
Cool.
So what do I know?
Oh, a lot more than me. You know what? Because I've seen those tools in art stores before, or my partner, who's also an artist, has at least half of those tools, and I've seen them all, and I'm like, I wonder why that is the way that is. Is that just a style thing? Like, the cork, does it help the ruler from moving? Why?
It's the ink doesn't bleed underneath. I didn't learn that until I was starting to learn how to draw comic books. I was like, whoa, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
I didn't
how
work that until I tried to use one without it and got this huge river of ink going under my ruler.
Ooh. Yeah, exactly.
It's awful.
Fascinating. And Becka, what about you? If I handed you $100 and said, go get a starter kit for someone going into comics, what would you get?
Okay, so to echo what was said earlier, and if you find I'm saying that a lot because I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry. D.S. Barrick. Speedball. Definitely get this. I bought this way back in 2009, and I'm still using it, and I've drawn 2 comic books with this. Okay. It's yay big. And it was cheap, under $10 at the time. So Speedball, black ink. And there's still some left. Yeah.
Wow.
All of Gehenna was drawn with this ink. plus another comic. That was, we're not going to get into that because it's the very first comic and it's very awkward. But yeah, I use brush pens. So I've gone through a bunch, but I've settled with these. These are, I would help I had more light here.
When
There
you
we
say
go.
brush pens, what do you mean?
Well, sorry, these are calligraphy pens. So the brand is Tombow. So they come in like a dark blue or a dark green. They usually come in packs of 2. So the blue ones here, if you can see the nibs. One of
okay.
them is thicker than the other one. The green ones are thicker, so it's you have control over how much pressure you put on these. And I like to use these for the finer lines and for hair marks and drawing finer details. For paper, I used to get the comic art boards from Kansan. To this day, I cannot find them anymore. So just, you don't have to break the bank for paper. Just, there's other paper you can get 11 by 17. That's not exactly comic book paper, but just start with whatever size you're comfortable with. When I started drawing comics, I didn't use 11 by 17. I think it was like 12 by 14 possibly. Before I finally got my hands on 11 by 17, just do whatever you want and whatever you're comfortable with. And I use stuff that I can pick up like at Staples. Is there Staples in the States? I have no idea. Like Business Depot. But anyway, whatever store you get whiteout for corrections. And also I've seen people use whiteout for artistic effects too. And you could get white ink, but I recommend starting out with whiteout and these jelly pens. I think I got the wrong size here, but be careful what size you buy. Okay, here we go. I made this mistake. So I got number 5 and it's way too small. So go up a size, bigger than you think you need. And then later on down the line, you can invest in other materials, but that'd be my basic starter pack. Like, don't break the bank. And if you do decide you want to upgrade, get materials that will last you a long time, like the speedball paint, like good investment pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Another for watercolors, I get the Koi brand, and those have lasted me a long time, and they're great for travel. I don't have it handy on me right now because I think I've got that packed away. But yeah, I know, just continuing theme of professionalism. But but no, like I forget, it was pricey, but it's been worth it, because I've had it for a number of years. I've used it repeatedly, especially for commissions. And again, the brand name is Koi, and they have their little tiny palettes, and they're just great for travel, and they've lasted a very long time.
Cool.
But yeah, so that's my basic starter pack of traditional.
So to add to that speedball ink that everybody keeps recommending, yes, but when you buy ink, make sure that it is waterproof ink.
Yes, that's important.
I've been using this other ink. I stole it from my daughter, and this will open up. But when you try and go over it with something wet, it'll turn into a wash, which is cool. Yeah. It's great if that's what you want it to do. It's great for gray tones and things like that. But it is not gonna stay where you put it. You just be aware that certain things stay and certain things don't. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. Like I was working. There was one convention. It was Niagara Falls Comic Con, and I was working on a Slipknot commission, and I had the brand was Pentel brush pen, and those ones were thicker. And I found out the hard way that it was not waterproof, but it ended up working to my advantage because it's Slipknot. You can make it a bit dirty and messy, right? So I turned it into an ink wash, and I'm just like, yeah, it is what it is, whatever. But since then, remembering that, I've been very careful with what pens and inks to buy and making sure that they are waterproof. And another tip I'll give anyone working with traditional materials, like if things don't come out perfect, or you have, accidentally do something you didn't mean to do, to quote Bob Ross, happy accidents. Just evolve the piece. It'll be fine. You'll have a lot more fun drawing that way, and don't get into perfectionist mode.
I love it.
Yes.
And Shawn, you actually have gotten another question in my brain now. But if I handed you $100 and said, "Get me a starter comic artist set," what would you go after?
Well, everyone's suggestions has been all stuff that I'm using. So I think their stuff is like, I mean, the pens Becka just pointed out, these Tombos are fantastic little brush pens. They're great for traveling, and they can get very nice, very fine, thin lines, but some pressure will thicken those up big time.
And they're affordable.
They're so affordable. They're like under $3 or roughly floating around there.
Nice.
Yeah, they're pretty solid. If I'm not using one of those, I'm probably using these Winsor Newton Artist Watercolor Sable brushes in the pointed round variety and at number 3. I don't know if they make these anymore. I've been trying to find them, but they only do synthetic sable at the moment. Which honestly probably a good thing, but they're just not the same. So I've kind of been like phoning every store in Toronto and just scooping all of these up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to, because it's like I've been using them for almost 10 years now, and I'm in love with them. And the alternative is the number 7, which is very expensive. These are about $15.
Okay.
So they're kind of, they're not bad, and they can last like 3 to 6 months depending on the use. Other than that, actually these are pretty solid pens. They're Uniball Vision. They're waterproof ballpoint pens. They come in 2 styles, fine and extra fine, or micro, I should say. And these are excellent for just or lines of a single thickness, or doing hatching and stuff like that. They can almost mimic very fine lines that you can get from like a crow quill pen or nibs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition to those, the old toothbrush is always solid for kind of starting out and wanting to do kind of splatter effects and whatnot. This is just kind of the classic. I feel like most splatters that you saw in 90s comic books were probably done with a toothbrush.
Yeah, the toothbrushes, I just get, if I go to the dentist and they give me a free toothbrush, I'm like, there's my new ink brush.
Yeah, it goes right from the dentist's office into the pencil case. I
just use my regular toothbrush, and I'm like, damn, I don't have a toothbrush anymore.
Yeah, just rinse it off before you brush. You're good.
All black. My teeth are all black.
Yeah.
It's the charcoal trend.
This Daler Rowney Pro White is excellent for, it's basically like an opaque white. It's almost like a watercolor paint, but excellent for drawing over top of black ink sections. And then when I'm not using that, I'm probably using this tiny little watercolor kit that I got from the art store up the street for like $20. I've had it for years. It works fine. It's called Mungyo is the brand. And it does the job. I think I've painted most of my books with this kit. The pans you can purchase separately, which are the actual paint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these come out. You can buy different colors. You can customize your palette, and they're pretty cheap. They're like $4 to $5 a pan. And the only other thing, if you really want to, toss a few dollars down, which to be honest, I don't really recommend for watercolor paints because a tiny little kit will do you just fine. This brand, Daniel Smith, has a number of high quality pigments that honestly, some of them are really hard to beat. They're indigo and they're maroons. For me personally, are like, I live by those colors.
Oh, okay.
But you don't need them. You absolutely don't need them. Anything that they do, you can get in a pan and for $5 probably. The Daniel Smith brand just kind of makes things convenient. But that's about it. I don't. I don't. Everyone's recommendations were so solid that honestly, start there.
I love it. Well, to the folks watching, you heard it here. One, don't spend a lot of money. Get a lot of paper that is cheap. Get inexpensive inking pens, decent pencils, it sounds like. And it shouldn't be. It actually sounds like, as professionals in the comics industry, you guys probably spend about $100 on materials as your like norm, as opposed to like try and keep it cheap and only do $100 starter kit. So maybe I should modify the question to be like, for $20, what would you say? Fascinating, and it's so cool to learn like that a jar of ink yay big lasts you potentially years.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing too, when you're shopping, take advantage of the back to school sales.
Yes.
Like, especially like if you decide you're at a convention and you want to start drawing commissions, but oh no, you forgot something, go to the local store, the back to school stuff. Like they'll have the basics that you'll need, like for real. And you save a lot of money that way.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know if you guys have this in where they're up north where you're from, but we have a thing called Daiso here. It's a Japanese dollar store. It's actually a Taiwan. Is it Taiwanese or is it Japanese? I think it's Japanese. Anyway, and their paper and their little notebooks and their everything is $1. And they've got brush pens, and they always it's kind of janky. Like if you run out of a thing, they'll get a completely different thing in stock. It's awesome though, man. I'll go in there with my daughter and we'll just, blow $15 and get like buckets full of like knockoff Copic markers and all kinds of cool stuff.
So what place is it called again?
It's called Daiso.
Daiso.
Daiso. It's like a Japanese dollar store that's been cropping up in the States like crazy.
Okay, so I'll have to keep that in mind when I go to Boston, like pretty soon.
Yeah. Check it out if you get a chance. It's really cool.
Okay, thanks for the tip.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we have had a question come in. So one, thank y'all for talking the way you're talking, because I did not know that waterproof markers were a thing. Actual Dracula's come up with a good question then, which is any recommendations for best paper for alcohol-based markers?
Yeah. But I'm not going to give you my recommendation. Mylar, if you can draw, or vellum, if you can actually get like some, it's basically plastic. It's not actually paper. It works great. The other thing that works really, really good for Copic markers is the backside of some mat board. The mat board that you buy you cut out a little square and you're going to frame your piece of artwork or whatever, and it's going to go on your wall. The white side, the back side of it, it's archival, so it doesn't have any acid in it. It's acid-free. And it comes in huge sheets, so you can cut it down to pieces. It's already a board, so it's kind of solid, and you can draw on it without it getting all floppy and weird. It accepts those Copic markers like crazy because they'll soak right into it, and it looks really cool. You can do tons of blending without ruining the surface. It's awesome. Yeah, I stumbled across that when I had a bunch left over from doing printmaking stuff. And once I started using that, I was like, this is the best thing ever. I don't ever want to try and use a regular sheet of paper with Copic there again if I don't have to. So, yeah.
Interesting.
That's my rec.
I dig it. Becca, what about you? Any recommendation for best paper for alcohol-based markers?
I've got nothing, honestly. Like I don't look for paper like that. My go-tos are watercolor paper, and anything that takes like multimedia use paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I just use basically paint pens and watercolor when I do it, my commissions, and ink. So that is not my area of expertise, unfortunately.
Yeah, those alcohol-based markers are real weird. If you can get them to do what you want them to do, they're awesome. But if you can't, then they're a nightmare. So,
yeah.
Good to know. Actual Dracula says, awesome. Thanks. So one question I have, because we're nearly like 2 hours in, so we should probably end this soon. But one question I had for all of you, but we'll start with Shawn, is Shawn, a while back I noticed you sort of stopped drawing for a bit. You then came back and you put some detail work into your Samurai Father. how do you know when to stop? How do you know when a piece is done, and not just keep going and adding more and more detail?
Man, I don't know. I don't like. I still have that problem where I'm just like, I don't know. It's basically when I get hungry, the piece is done. It's like my rule.
I like
To be
that.
like, yeah, I really. That's something that I'm still trying to figure out with the style. It's actually way easier on comic book pages, um, because to be honest, I don't love putting a lot of detail into my comic pages. I just almost want them as simple as possible, because I'm trying to tell a story. I'm not trying to draw a cover that needs to
Oh,
really kind of like, um, where you might want to traditionally maybe pack a little bit more detail and put a little bit more work into that. With the comic pages, at least, the goal is to be simple, clear, clean, and legible. And if I'm adding a lot of detail to that, it's not like this piece right here is probably way more detail than I'm going to put into an actual comic book page or into a panel in a comic. Um, I don't think I would add as many lines as this, and that's because I would also be painting, my pages, and I might end up adding a little bit more detail in there. Um, but yeah, so I don't have a good answer for that. Yeah, that's a hard one. I would have to think a bit more.
okay. Well, just for this one specifically, what made you sort of stop where you did the first time? Because I noticed you stopped for a bit and then you came back, and what I particularly noticed is you put lines in white in the hair. So
Yeah,
why
that's
why
right.
did you stop that first time? What made you go cool? Because I think you stopped for like a good 5 minutes.
Yeah, so the reason I stopped there was because actually, especially in like this background here, I wanted all this stuff to dry before I moved on to add
Oh,
a little bit more detail with that Daley Rowney white paint. So I figured I would give it a little bit of time, let all of the ink kind of seep into the fibers of the page before I sat down to add all the white. There's been times where I've not let things dry enough and then went into it and had to start over, I guess is the easiest way to say it.
oof.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? Good learning experience, really good learning experience. But I've kind of learned to not rush it. Wait till it's dry before you you jump back in and start adding a little bit more to it.
Interesting. And I guess that too, that pause for letting it dry would also give it time to, or give you time, I should say, to think and actually process and go, oh, maybe this is done. This is done everything artistically that I wanted that panel or page or cover to do.
Well, it's definitely a good idea to kind of rest your eyes,
Oh
and
yeah.
take break. There have been times where I've been working on a page and just absolutely stuck on one panel for hours, like 2, 3, 4 hours. This is during pencils where I can't figure it out. Sometimes drawing a page feels like solving a puzzle, and there are some cases where just the answer isn't coming to you.
Hmm.
And there have been moments where like I said, I've been working on something for many hours, and then I've stepped away for half an hour, come back, and then nailed it in 5 minutes. Just like sometimes you just have to not look at the thing that you're doing, go do something else for a little bit, come back to it, and approach it with fresh eyes. Uh, and that honestly, it's something that's helped me so much, allowing myself to take breaks and spend time away from the work while I'm working on it.
I dig it. Thank you. And Becca, how about yourself? How do you know when a piece, a page, a panel, how do you know when it's done?
Um, Lots of self-loathing, self-doubt, and four-letter words. And as what Shawn said, like taking a break. Usually, like all it takes for me is like I go out and walk the dog, or just a completely different task, and then I come back and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I need to do. And then it was like, what was I so stressed about? You know. Um, Sometimes you're going to be fighting with whatever piece you're working with. Like this one, for example, like my plan was it was supposed to be such a simple idea, and I didn't expect to be struggling as much as I have been. But you know what? You need those times, um, those pieces that you're fighting with, and then it becomes a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm digging the face. Being a fan of the Crow, it reminds me a lot of that.
Thank you.
I'm also very much enjoying the extremely heavy blacks.
Mhm.
It scratches a part of my brain I don't see a lot in comics now, so it's just, I dig it.
Yeah, like my work, especially for the darker stuff I've been making, it's been evolving into more of like a noir style. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not what I originally planned, but I'll just keep going with it, you know. And I'm enjoying it a lot more, but it can be challenging too, because in your head, it's like, I know how the face, what it looks like.
Mhm.
And then there's mapping it out. So the challenge for me is like, in order to work faster, like cut back on drawing in so much detail in pencil, especially when it's going to get filled in with a lot of heavy black, you know. And on this piece, like the eyes are definitely not done. Like there's going to be more done with it, but for now, it's like it can be modified with the materials that I have, you know,
Yeah.
and just see where it goes from there. And it can also be digitally altered too with Photoshop. Because the cool thing with this is that you can, once, you know, if you're starting out and once you get comfortable with digitally altering your work. So that what I mean by that is there's settings you can use that will make the blacks even blacker or
Mhm.
make the watercolor stuff like punch out or as little as you want. And also the good thing and why I've been using blue pencil with this, it's like I can adjust the settings where the pencils will disappear and I don't have to use an eraser to get rid of these lines.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. And then like where I'm going with this, like it's going to get even messier at the bottom too. So it's turning out to be fun and also kind of relearning how black ink works on on paper.
Fair. And the 4 or 5 touchdown points, so that's your tornadoes, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So it's actually the tornadoes. It's going to be like a bunch of sub vortices or other vortexes inside of a bigger tornado. So that part I haven't done yet. So I'm like, how am I going to approach that part? I have no clue, but I'm just winging it as I go and come up with something that I'm happy with. But I think like I'm going to take a break eventually tonight and sit back and sort of think about how to approach this portion down here and the eyes.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing what it looks like when it's done, and I've got my copy of the 3rd issue.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone's pieces looks awesome, by the way.
Oh,
Like, haven't had a chance to say that, but
Becka,
yeah.
I had my head down for a while, and then I just looked up now, and it's amazing. It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
I had just kind of seen when you were blocking everything in, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. It's like a really high contrast look. I haven't looked up at all since you started putting the gray tones in. It looks phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's still a ways to go, and like I said, like, you know, on paper it should have been a lot simpler, and I could have been done it by now, but it's not happening that way. But your piece though, like the details and the line work,
Oh, thanks.
like I just loving it. The cross hatching, is that it? That's what it looks like from here.
Yeah. I used to do a lot more. I want to try to get back to doing more like solid spotted blacks to get that really bold look. But I've been getting into more and more hatching with the brush, which sometimes I think drives me a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
and Dan, for yourself, how do you know when a piece is done?
Well, I think everything that both Shawn and Becka have said is totally on point. Like I feel very similarly to it. I think one of the realizations I had was in a printmaking class that I took at university. We were working on these etchings, and my professor walked by and asked, "How's it going?" I was sitting with a friend of mine. We were both working on our pieces. And I said, "I think it's coming along pretty well." And then he looked at it and said, "Do you think it's just finished now?" And that made a really big impression on me. So my advice would be kind of when you feel like you're about 80% of it, make a mental note to look at your piece when you feel like you're about 80% of the way through, and just check and see, do I need to add more to it? Because sometimes sort of a sense of incompletion or unfinishedness in some areas can give it, I think, a more lively, interesting look. And another thing to go along with Becca's comment about self-loathing and fear of ruining a piece, I often ask myself, okay, it's almost like a trying to evaluate the odds, where if I keep going with this, what are the chances? How much better could I make this, and what's the risk of just totally screwing it up if I decide to do that? Can I live with it being a little bit less than maybe what I imagine in my head if the reality is that it's not going to, the investment of time isn't worth it, and it might not pay out, and it might actually feel overworked at that point. So I do try to err a little bit on the side of underworking pieces, because of the bad feelings you can have, I feel like it feels better to look at a piece and say, oh, I could have done a little more on that, than look at a piece and say, I should have stopped 10 minutes before I did.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Huh. And David, last but not least, for yourself, because you're our digital component for the night, how and when do you know you're done a piece?
If I concur with what we said before, that if you're drawing interior pages, it's not a cover. It is don't be too precious with it, especially if you know you're going to be doing the inking yourself. You don't need to spend hours and hours doing all the detail on pencils. You're going to be doing it. It's not like you're handing it off to somebody else and you're worried like, oh, they're going to think I can't draw. You know what I mean? It's just not. You don't have to be so precious with it. Like, boom, that's done. No, I'm just joking. His leg down here needs some stuff. But yeah, that's. I don't know, man. I just try and blast through stuff. Also, I kind of work up a process for each book. So this book is going to have inks. Then it's going to have a gray tone that I will then turn purple so I can color underneath it. And so when I get to that point, I'm like, okay, now I need to do the grays. Okay, cool, I got those. Then I need to maybe put a background, or there's no background, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just like knocking things down and hitting all of the marks that I need to finish that page or that panel, and then just move on from there. Don't rack your brain about whether or not it's good enough or anything. It's never actually good enough. You will never actually be good enough. Give up and make the comic book, because then when you finish the comic book, no one is gonna question how good you are. They're gonna be like, you made a comic, it's so cool, you're cool. And that's how you know kind of how that goes.
I dig it. And that's fascinating, given the little conversation we had before the stream, you and I. That's cool. Then I think, you know what, we've hit 2 hours and 3 minutes or whatever. Like you said, Becka, you mentioned earlier, it's maybe time to take a break with it, let it sit, do your thing. Shawn, you finished your art, and it looks like you're now working on maybe pages or interiors for another piece. So why don't we call it after one last question? And I guess my last question for tonight is simply going to be, where can folks get your stuff? I know we mentioned it earlier, but it's been, I don't know, an hour since I asked that question. So you know what? We'll start again with Dan, and we'll go clockwise again. So Dan, what's your name? Where do people follow you? Where can they get your stuff?
That's good. So my name is Dan Barrick. I go by DS Barrick online. So Instagram, just DS Barrick. dsbarrick.com is probably the easiest place to pick up my stuff. So the book is, I don't know which camera to show it on again here. It's Murgatroyd, Nepenthe. So it's available if you there'll just be a big orange button on dsparrot.com that says, I think it says shop now or something. Click on that. It'll show you the physical version of this, the digital version, and there's also a print available of the 2 characters, which is a little acrylic painting reproduction here.
Oh, nice.
Colors look great and it glitters, so everybody should definitely buy that.
That's cool.
Thanks, Konrad.
Absolutely. Shawn, go for it. Your name, your books, and where can people get them?
Yeah, well, thank you for having us first. I really appreciate that. It's been fun. Everybody's pieces turned out so amazing. It's been super cool to watch and kind of learn about everybody's process and the tools that they're using. And it's a mark of a good broadcast when the people on it are learning more by surrounding each other, you know. So it's been very neat, just kind of learning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm Shawn Daley. You can just kind of SHAWNDALEY. I use Instagram, Twitter, and now Threads quite a bit to just post artwork, share the stuff that I'm working on. And I stream on Twitch a couple of days a week for a couple hours, just either doing warm-ups or when I'm working on a book, I'll stream some of the inking and painting, and I'll just be hanging out discussing, the stuff that I'm working on and techniques and tools and stuff. And then I also have a Patreon that I've recently launched. The most popular tier is actually just $2, and it's awesome because people get kind of a sneak peek at books and a look at the process and pages that go into everything. I've got a few new books on the way. The most recent one is called Illumon, 7 Rays of the Sun. It's basically a mature take on Pokemon. Basically, it's Pokemon inspired by Dragon Ball Z. So it's kind of it's something I've wanted to see out in the comics world for a long time, as a fan of both of those things, and especially Pokemon, because like I grew up with Pokemon as a child.
Hell yeah.
And I've always loved it, but it just, it's still for 10-year-olds, like 25 years later, which I get it. I totally understand why. But I wanted a version of that for the fans who grew up with everything. So I thought I would just make it because I wasn't seeing it out there. And that'll be out shortly. And Samurai Grandpa is on the way. More on that Friday, probably. So that's me. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll flip over to Becka.
Hey, so you can find my stuff on thebecka.com, and you can buy my books, Gehenna Death Valley, The Wormhole Club Tragedy. Oh, and if you happen to be in the area, KW in Cambridge, check out the new comic book shop, The Hero's Tale. And the shop, they're just starting out, and they're getting more stock in, and they have a real emphasis on the community, supporting the community. And I just painted a mural in there of Vorticia Vortex, who I'm drawing right now. Yeah. And issue 3 of Wormhole Club Tragedy will be coming out sometime in the summer or fall.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, David.
You just caught me there mending my fences. You can find me also at thebecka.com. Oh, sorry. Looking to make a joke. Konrad, you're real great. As I said before, beyond ropes and pulleys, technology is not my forte. So thanks for helping me enter to the modern world via live streams and whatnot, all this stuff I don't really understand. But yeah, you can find me on naritacomic.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Lujan Art. That's got links to not only my comic books that I'm putting out, but also to like my bands and stuff. If you want to listen to some really terrible music, yeah. So anyway, I'm on Twitter and whatnot if you want to follow me there. I started a Discord, and then I got kicked off Discord, and then I started another Discord just so that I could stream today with you, Konrad. So we'll see how it goes this time. I don't know how I got kicked off, but I did. Apparently, I'm a real nefarious dude. So, yeah. Anyway, that's me.
Awesome. Well, to all of you, absolutely thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, for sharing your thoughts, for sharing 2 hours of your evening with me, and some truly awesome art.
It's been really awesome to meet everybody. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and feel really privileged to be working alongside you tonight.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
It's nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
And hey, Shawn, what's up? I'll be seeing you soon. Yeah, and Konrad, thank you for having me again and for having us on your show. It's been a great time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Then, yeah. Unlike a normal interview, I will end this in the first time I've ever done this. So for the folks out there in YouTube land, absolutely thanks for tuning in. Comment down below what you thought of everybody here, of the art. Please do go check out all of their social medias, check out their websites, which I will probably in an hour from now amend the description to include links for everybody, so you can go get their books, because that's the important part here, because this awesome art needs to be bought and you need to own it. And subscribe to this channel for more, and absolutely we will see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Nah. Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become